So before we get right into this, before we delve into today's class, let's run a quick recap. What was last? What was our biggest takeaway from last session? Any one of you can go first. We treated branding and we had a lot of discussions and suggestions and highlights. So briefly, can each of us just tell us one big takeaway from the class? Customers. So this is 4:30 already. We have about sorry, hold on. Yes. So we have about 30 minutes roughly. And thankfully, today's slides are not so lengthy. So let's breeze through. Cynthia isn't on the call. Aries isn't on the call. They're having some engagements at the moment. So it's just myself that's going to take this class. Okay. So we've talked about product development. We've talked about branding. We've talked about you know identifying your customers, who they are, where they are, how to get them. And now this is another step in the right direction, how to onboard your very first customers. This is perhaps the most decisive stage of every single startup, right? And just as a side note, there is no one size fits all for how to onboard your first customers. There is no perfect template for this. A lot of customers, they basically create their own templates. They basically create industry practices as they go along with this. But given what we have in these slides, it's this what we have in these slides seeks to create some pointers that we all should be cognizant of if we want to um, make the best use of every engagement we have with potential customers. We've had a lot of startups um, spend a lot of time trying to onboard customers. They get a lot of things wrong. Sometimes they don't know how to communicate their products. Sometimes they are targeting the wrong customers. Sometimes the onboarding process is too complex for customers to understand. But this slide basically seeks to help us understand how to really go about this as effectively as possible. So this chart right here is what we call customer journey mapping. Okay, I'm going to let us peruse it for a bit, let it sink in. All right. Um, so most times before you use a product, you the the initial touch points or the initial decision you get to make is one that's often subconscious or you're not so conscious of. So things like asking a friend, shit, things like asking a friend for advice on how to use a product, things like going online to see alternatives to what you're trying to buy. All of these things are touch points or maps as to how you get to use or as to how you finally get to use a particular product. So, given what we have on this chart, we have Joe, given the persona we're trying as depicted in this slide. And now this particular chart is for a software company. Apparently, we have just one of us building the software, but I try to make the communication as generic and relative as possible. So we have Joe, a 32 years old graphic designer, and he's trying to get the best headphone possible. So Joe works on his computer all day, and he needs comfortable and noise cancelling headphones to be able to listen to music, podcasts, and focus on his work. So there's the awareness part of your customers trying to understand what you're about basically. And some of our customers don't are not tech savvy. You won't find them online. Some of our customers are offline, right? So, but guess what? If they can't browse alternatives online, they seek referrals offline. So they talk to other colleagues, even their relatives, as to soliciting suggestions and feedbacks. Okay, these guys came to meet me earlier in the marketplace about so product. What do you think about them? Are they good to go? So what we want to communicate as much as possible is your value proposition earlier on. I'm going to buttress on that before now. But your first contact with your customer should communicate your value proposition so much that when they start to consider now other consideration, when they start to consider, you know, um, comparing your service or your product to existing solutions, they're able to, peg your value to be like, okay, this is what these guys told me they're about and what they're looking to offer. But this existing solution out there or the alternative out there, how can I make the right decision? How do I run my opportunity cost and all of that? Now, when it comes to the stage of purchase, as much as possible, you want to make it so easy for a customer to interact with your product or your service, right? So I think this is typical of a fintech, of an e-commerce platform. Being able to integrate as many payment solutions as possible, make shipping options as swift and available for customers, as best as possible, and all of that. So, looking at your process, you want to figure out, okay, now your customers agree to use your product. How easy will it be for them to, first of all, identify your value proposition and complete the transaction, or complete, using your service within, as seamless as possible, right? That's something a lot of founders often miss out on. In the one of the most critical startup metrics to measure in the whole startup world is um, customer burn rate. Yeah. So this is the rate at which a customer gets to decline using your product after a particular period of time and all that. So you want to make sure that you're able to retain customers over time. And one of the best ways you can do that is, building systems and structures in place that allows them to use your products even without, a customer service putting them through, or them having to solicit information from anyone around them. You want to make it as you want to create a very seamless experience. I don't know if there'll be an opportunity to talk about customer experience as a distinct topic, but that's something a lot of brands have gotten right. Customer experience, human-centered designs, and all of that. It is what has stood has made quite a lot of brands stand out there from others. Then advocacy. Guess what? If you are able to deliver a value proposition as timely and seamless as possible, you your customers get to become your ambassadors, and that's when you've known you've created a very good product or a very good service. When your product is able to create a fandom, when you're able to make fans out of your product, then you know that for sure you're going to retain that customer, you're going to serve that customer over a long period of time. And not just that, there's the potential of receiving other customers. Like, these customers would be the one to make recommendations for you, and 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 the like. So you can go as far as engaging the customers, doubling down on the engagement, to seek for review, to to have the customers rate your service. You you can only tell a happy and satisfied customer to rate you or create a review for you. You can't tell a displeased customer to do that. So across board, from awareness to advocacy, you truly want to make, you truly want to, map out touch points where a customer interacts with your product, and when they're not interacting with your product, when they are offline or taking care of other engagements, you want to make sure that the message you've passed across while they're using your product is enough for them to make their decisions offline, right? And then come back to use your product. For example, let me throw this question out there. When you think of an online platform where you can get some of the best images, maybe to run digital ads or to create content? What comes to your mind first? Who wants to go first? I have mine, but I'd like to hear some of our opinions. A platform where you can get icons, pictures.
Well, for me, uh, can I
Yeah, go on.
okay, you mentioned where you can get ideas, pictures, and all right.
Icons, pictures, yes.
Yeah, for me, I use Pinterest first, or Pinterest. I still don't know how to pronounce it.
Pinterest.
Pinterest or Pinterest.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pinterest. Yeah. Then I can also use on Splash. That's on splash.com. Then
Okay.
there are two others. Yeah, but
Interesting.
majorly Pinterest first.
Pinterest. That's your first choice. Emmanuel.
Well, I do graphics a little bit for people, so my first choice definitely is on Splash anytime because like there are no copyright infringements in using on Splash images.
Interesting.
And then for icons, I use DeckTZ. I also go on Google sometimes to get icons because I can easily modify them to scale. Like,
interesting.
so on Splash is for images.
On Splash, your first choice. Akonji?
Yeah, for images.
Okay. Akonji, you want to
go?
For
me, yeah. I use FreePic and also I use FreePic and also on Flash. Then icon packs, I just get them from Microsoft icons basically. Most icons I find them there.
Okay, now we see.
So the ones I can't get, I just go online.
Okay, good. You know, if they tap any of us any time of the day to list your first choice, we all like across board on Splash as one is for you guys. I think, well, for me, my first choice is actually Pinterest, right? So now, guess what? These brands over time, they've been able to map out a good customer journey, such that when it's time to make that choice to use such service, they are the first people that pop up in your mind, right? These things don't happen by default. It's by design, actually. These guys are able to know that if you engage our platform, you get exactly what you want and more, right? And some of them go as far as I think Pinterest does is they share notifications. Like on my iPhone, I receive pop-ups to be like, okay, new content, check out this image. All of these interactions are very important in trying to map out or trying to, first of all, engage your customers and really retain your customers. So some of us that are not running online businesses, right, where our customers are offline, as much as possible, you want to create a sort of communication system or create, or leverage touch points across your communication channels with them, such that you are the first person that comes to their mind where they think of, okay, I want to procure, raw materials to build a construction project. They'd be like, oh, these guys, because of this reason or that reason, they'd likely call on you guys first over other brands. Or a market seller is like, okay, I want to purchase 10 bags of yam, and they cannot think of another person than Symbiosis. You want to take into consideration how possible it is or how practical it is that you make that a reality for your first customer groups, right? After this class, I'm going to share a template. It looks like this, but it's more simplistic than what we have in this chart, right? Where you can actively, draw out your customer journey map from awareness to consideration to interaction, purchase, onboarding, and the likes, right? I'd like to see what we can come up with. Okay, moving on. Requirements needed to successfully onboard a customer. Just like I said earlier, you want to communicate your value proposition as early as possible. In fact, write your first 5 sentences, right, where you get to approach your early adopters. You want to communicate your value proposition. This is who you are. This is the reason why you'd want to use our service, and this is how we are looking to provide this solution to you. As much as possible, drop it on them, right? And the thing about communicating your value proposition is that you are identifying with their pain points. Customers don't have a lot of time to spend, right? Time is time is their greatest luxury. So at the slightest chance you get, you want to be able to identify with their pain points. Oh, I know of a farmer that or a market seller that goes through this pain points. You've already caught their attention to be like, okay, he understands the game, he understands what's going on in the market. Now you want to now chip in. But this is how you're looking to solve this solution or solve this friction. 1, 2, 3 points. And guess what? You have their attention. So you want to be able to communicate your value proposition early on as much as possible. Then, in the process of onboarding, you want to collect necessary data to track and measure key performance indicators and improve onboarding process. Very, very important. So this is something you take into consideration. It's okay to start with a spreadsheet with just customer name, email address, phone number. That's where every startup starts with. LinkedIn, major platforms we have out there, they start with basic information and then they build it out over time. But in trying to onboard your first customers, keep the necessary data you'll be asking for very simple, such that you don't turn them off or you don't have them asking questions that you can't even answer. So collect necessary data to track and measure KPIs and improve onboarding process. And some of these KPIs to measure is customer retention rates. Right? How long do you retain your customers over a period of time? Over 6 months, do you get to what's your the basic calculation for this is again checking your burn rates. How many customers have you lost over this period of time? That's how you'll be able to get how many you'll be able to retain over that same period of time. Your customer profitability score. Now, how do you calculate profitability? Basically, you want to look at how much you've gained in total revenue minus cost of acquiring per customer. We want to be able to measure this over. At this stage, though, given the fact that we are pre-revenue, we are basically trying to validate our products. This may not be necessary KPI to track. Customer lifetime value, of course, not so necessary at this point in time, but something to take into consideration. And certain metrics will trigger that you start to measure these KPIs. I think we'll get to those growth stages, right? The customer lifetime value, the entire period of time you're able to service a customer. So, typically, social media platforms, their customer lifetime value sometimes, the likes of WhatsApp, Facebook, is usually, infinite because every day we interact with the platform, we make use of the platform and all that. But a platform like Bolt or Uber, for example, the customer lifetime value is a bit, lesser than social media platforms because we only interact with them when we want to, move transit basically. Then your customer turnover rates, basically how many customers have you been able to retain and how many has left over the same period of time. Now look at the last three. I think this is something you guys can start measuring whilst you're deploying your first solutions to your first customer groups. Number of customer complaints, right? And then number of customer compliments you're getting from customers. And then number of customer referrals. That's something that will trigger, okay, this customer actually vibes with your product for them to be able to make referrals to other colleagues and stakeholders in their circle. So these are some of the KPIs to take into consideration while trying to onboard your first customer. Some founders actually perform poorly with this. So you see them deploy a solution to a customer, but they are not able to keep up with the customer. There's no effective CRM. I remember we've talked about customer relationship management at some point. Now, some of this data is what would help you effectively build an efficient customer relationship management tool. Right? And you're able to provide a more personalized service because we live in a world where personalization is not right. We live in a world where personalization is the key to is the key to retaining customers, right? So you want to be able to read your data over time and speak to the kind of customer segments that relates more with this information and the likes. Okay, moving quickly. How do I improve onboarding process? Key questions to ask yourselves. Um, is the process too long? This is something that usually turns off customer groups. If your process is too long, they might not tell you, but guess what? They would end up not using your products anymore. Are they confused why you ask for certain pieces of information? Exactly. So you want to keep your information inquiries as simplistic and brief as possible. Usually information that they are not skeptical to give out. Basically, given the nature of your product, if there's a need to ask for address, you ask. If there's no need, don't ask for irrelevant information that are not useful for for building out an effective system, right? Now, did you understand the value proposition? And at what stage does it become clear? Now, the thing about what stage does it become clear? Do you want to make it so that they understand the value proposition at awareness stage, or at consideration stage, or at onboarding stage? It's very important that you make it clear to them at the earliest stage possible, at consideration stage or awareness stage, right? As early on as possible, so that you're able to, so that there's that interest, there's that curiosity to continue to engage with your product right until the very end of it, right? Right until they're able to see the end-to-end service that you offer and be like, oh, okay, this is what these guys say they're about. This is what they've been trying to propose all along, right? And now, given the answers you're able to get from these questions, guess what? You iterate. You iterate. Like I said earlier, there's no one size fits all for this. It's a virtuous loop, right? It's a loop that continues to modify itself and then improve over time until you're able to arrive at your PMF, your product market fit, right? So basically, tech products or basically startup products are in different stages. What we are trying to achieve now is your minimum viable product, right? And then when you're able to achieve a system where every single customer group or customer segment understands your product and are able to engage your product end to end, then safe to say you've achieved your product market fit. Right? And usually startups do that well under 2 years. Well, tech startups. For non-tech startups, it's a bit longer than that. Or a bit shorter, as the case may be. It depends on what you're selling or the service you're offering. How do you determine if prospects are good or not? So prospects, we're talking about early adopters. So find the innovators and early adopters and look out for key traits. Right? So early adopters in this context refers to people that are willing to test run your products and, as a matter of fact, pay for your products. Right? The very first people that are willing to trust that your products is the next big thing for them or for their industry. They are usually the bold guys. They like to sort of stand out from the norm. That's one of the key hidden traits actually. So let's see what we have there, because if you're able to notice these key traits, you'll be able to spot your early adopters and then double down on those guys. So those guys, they have a reasonably high social status, which in turn enables thought leadership. So when speaking of social status, we're not talking about wealth, or these guys are overly wealthy. No, they just have quite a social influence in their market space or in their industry. They are not necessarily, not necessarily from the wealth perspective. So typically, when you go into a market, let me pick Symbios for example. You're trying to approach market women. You find out that the early adopters are people that, once you're able to spot your early adopter, trust me, those are the market women that, once they're able to vibe with your product, other market women will be like, they have this influence basically to draw in other people to use your products. That's basically how it works. So you want to look out for those people that sort of play the role of thought leaders in their various spaces, right? And then engage them. They have reasonable access to finances. Again, this may not be entirely, large sum of finance, but the idea of this point is most times your early adopters are those people that are already, you know, preferring solutions to their problems, but perhaps in a crude way, unprofessional way, in that regard. So, which means they are able to at least have some level of finance to solve their problems the way they deem fit or the way they are able to, right? And now, once you're trying to launch a product, you want to make sure that these guys are able to pay for your product, because again, your product is not truly validated until it's being paid for, right? That is startup 101. So you want to look out for those early adopters that not only have an influence in your space or in the industry space, but also have, or they are willing to place a bet on you. Basically, they are able to let go of a few bucks to try out your product and see where it leads, right? Thirdly, they possess high levels of education and a reasonable approach to risk. In this context, education does not mean, in the formal sense of things like they are, they are, they went to school, they have BSc, PhD, and all that. No, in this context, what this message is trying to pass across is they possess a high level of awareness of the industry, the market, the problem, or the solution that is in question. Basically, that's the main meaning of education here, right? So, and they using what they know, they tend to make more reasoned decisions as to whether or not to become involved in a particular product. So these guys, unlike innovators, so innovators are the guys that come before early adopters. Innovators are, their level of risk is quite high. They jump on any product without taking into consideration the pros and cons. But early adopters, they take the time to think through the process before making a decision. But when they make that decision, trust me, they are in it with you for the long haul, right? So these are key traits to take note of when trying to approach a prospective early adopter or early adopters. Then light sales cycle, another important point. You want to rigorously qualify prospects to find ones where a single decision maker can green light adoption of your offering. You know, some of us play in industries where your customer groups are companies, are firms, and you know how firms are. It's almost it's quite difficult trying to um, it becomes quite difficult trying to access the decision makers fact, and so it becomes quite tough trying to run your sales cycle end to end. But guess what? You can explore low hanging fruits. Regardless of your industry, you're going to find newbies in the industries or lesser guys in the industries. I think we've had this conversation with EK Briggs over time as to how to, leverage low hanging fruits. People that can make quick decisions and can simply decide to use your product as swiftly as possible. Those are the kind of people you truly want to approach at this level of onboarding your first customers. And then lastly, you want to find businesses that are intrinsically reachable. Yes. So for some of us playing the consulting space, where most of our target groups have online presence, we've had quite a bittersweet experience. Bittersweet in the sense that some companies or some individuals, although they have profiles on LinkedIn, but they are not just accessible for various reasons. They may be busy, they may not entirely vibe to cold messages, cold emails, and all of that. And then we are also going to find some, or we have found some that are more, that are more receptive and more open to collaborating or having a conversation with us. So you want to truly spot or prioritize the businesses that are easy to reach or easy to access. You don't need to waste too much time trying to find a company or trying to burrow through the bureaucracy of a firm, right? Trying to burrow through the bureaucracy of a firm with high levels of uh, that are basically hard to get. All right. Pardon the background noise. Give me a second. Okay. Moving on. So, how you should communicate with customers. So, first off, you want to prove you put in some work. I remember sharing some hints on this with Akonji Emmanuel. You want to make sure that, you know, at that point of contact, you want to show some level of resourcefulness, some level of grit that you've been able to amass over a period of time. Because some of these things are really perception based. You want to make sure that you present yourself as though a startup or individual that is reliable. So in trying to communicate what you do, you want to also chip in one or two tractions you've been able to make over time. And traction in this context may not necessarily mean, the number of customers you've served prior to meeting that particular customer group or customer. It may involve things like how you've morphed your brand name, how you've interacted with different stakeholder groups to arrive at your current solution. These things send a message to your customer group that, oh, these guys are actually thoughtful of what they're building and they are taking, and for them to have made the decision to approach me, they might have put in some work and it would be nice to see where their effort leads. So all of these things communicate to showing that, again, you are not scared of putting in the work, right? So you want to communicate things that don't scale. In startups, there's what we call things that don't scale, and these are some of the rigorous, Herculean tasks we do every day that don't necessarily lead to your startup's growth, but it is also very essential. Let me give an example. Things like it depends on the stage of your startup, but things like putting out content or articles about your industry is not necessarily scaling. It's not a marketing strategy, so to speak, right? You're not using it as a medium to engage your customers. It doesn't scale, but guess what? It speaks for you over time. When a customer goes online or ask around, they'll be like, oh, this is the person that posted that article. So all of these things again stands to improve your brand perception in the face of your customers over time when they're able to look at everything you've been able to achieve over a period of time up until your interaction with them. So prove you've put in some work as much as possible. It helps you. It makes the decision, or the conversation a bit lighter, right? As best as it can be. Then start providing value. After identifying yourself, if at all possible, give the prospects one or two useful takeaways, right? So let's say for AK Bricks, let's say you are speaking with a customer. Let's say you're speaking with a project developer, and he's like, and after you've communicated your value proposition and you're about to leave, you've exchanged contacts, you can have one or two takeaways about the construction industry and where it is going, about one or two materials they are using that that is currently facing extinction. Giving your knowledge about sustainability, you'll be like, oh, actually, concrete is this and this. You may want to figure out how to leverage an alternative raw material Just show some level of industry expertise. It helps. It really sticks for customer groups, right? They be like, oh, okay, this guy knows his onions, he knows the game, and it's something that would help the conversation um, going forward. Sorry, excuse me. Right. So third, ask for a specific small thing. So most times you want to end the conversation with a scheduled date or follow on. Very important. You don't want to end the conversation with, okay, I'll use your product when I'm ready. Don't take such answers. You don't take no, and you don't take such responses like, I'll call you when I'm ready. You want to, as much as possible, have a full-on discussion with them, like engage them up until the point that they consider using your product. So at the end of every conversation, you should leave a note or end with the prospect of scheduling a follow-on conversation. And if you're able to, you can go as far as giving the customers, agenda for the next meeting, things we'd like to talk about with them on the next call. You're sparking an interest in them. In fact, it has proven very effective for me especially. I remember how I'm having to engage this particular executive at United Nations running some projects on the side. We talk once every 2 months because he's a very busy guy as well. But guess what? We make sure that proud to scheduling a call, we outline a lot of agendas to discuss, and on the call we are able to touch on everything. And whilst we're ending the call, we are already outlining things to talk about in the next 2 months. People are busy, so you want to make sure that you're able to pinpoint areas that are of interest to them and stick to it, right, as much as possible, right? So very important points to take into consideration as well. Oh, okay, so that's the end of this deliverable actually. So like I said, there is no one size fits all. All that I've provided in these slides are touch points, areas to look out for, pointers to consider in trying to onboard your first customers. Right. So for this week, your deliverables are as follows. Like I said, I'm going to share with us a template, a more simplified template, um, um, in comparison to what I shared earlier, where you design your customer journey map. Then you want to list KPIs to measure along your customer journey map. So at the point of awareness, what KPI are you measuring? At the point of onboarding customers or at the point of them using your product, what KPIs are you measuring as much as possible? And then third, deploy version 1.0. Basically, this one is action based right now. Gather your feedbacks for iteration. I believe the both of us, Ike Bricks and Symbios, are approaching the stages of actively onboarding first customers. For Ike Bricks, I think we'd have to discuss more about how things are coming along with enactors and the likes. So, but yeah, this is what we have. These are the 3 deliverables for the week, and they'll be uploaded on Trello sometime today, or we can get started. Right? Okay. So we've come to